Welcome to the 2020 Census. This video will introduce you to the 2020 Census, present a quick overview of the online questionnaire, and help you answer the questions. The 2020 Census is a count of every person living in the United States. The census is required by the U.S. Constitution and takes place once every 10 years. The 2020 Census is very important. Your responses help to determine the number of seats each state has in Congress and guide how more than $675 billion in federal funding is spent in communities each year. The 2020 Census is easy. Completing these questions only takes about 10 minutes. You can respond online from a computer, tablet, or mobile phone 24 hours a day. You can also respond over the phone or using the paper questionnaire. If you respond, we may not need to send a Census Bureau interviewer to visit you. An interviewer may still visit if you respond late, if we have follow-up questions, or for other surveys. Your information is confidential. Federal law protects your responses. Your answers can only be used to produce statistics and cannot be used against you by any government agency or court. Now we will take you on a quick tour of the Internet questionnaire. Step-by-step instructions will be provided later in the video. When you visit my2020census.gov, you will log in using the Census ID from the materials that were mailed to you or left at your door. We will ask you to confirm your address and provide your name and phone number. Next, we will ask you to count how many people will be living or staying at this address on April 1st, 2020, and list the name of each person who will be living or staying at your address. We will also remind you to include people that might have been missed. We will ask whether the home is owned or rented, and who owns or rents the home. We will ask each person about their sex, date of birth and age, Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and race. When there is more than one person at an address, we will ask how they are related to the reference person. Finally, we will ask whether anyone sometimes stays at another address. If you're ready to begin, go to my2020census.gov now. The online questionnaire is available in English and 12 non-English languages. To select a language, click on the globe icon and select the name of the language, or select the name of the language at the bottom of any screen. Don't worry if you are looking for a language that is not listed. This video will show a step-by-step demonstration. Keep watching. You will need to complete the 2020 census in one session. If you leave, you will have to start over. To begin, choose Start Questionnaire. First, enter your 12-digit Census ID. Your Census ID is on the materials that we mailed to your address or left at your door. If you do not have a Census ID, select the link below the Login button and answer some additional questions about your address. You will still be able to respond. Then, confirm that you are completing the 2020 Census questionnaire for the address shown. Select Yes or No. If you will be staying at this address on April 1st, choose Yes. Otherwise, choose No. The Next button takes you forward, and the Previous button takes you back. Do not use the forward or back buttons on your browser, or else you may need to start over. Next, enter your name and telephone number. Enter your full name in English letters. Sometimes a message may appear on the screen that asks you to check your response or enter additional information. Review what you entered before selecting the Next button. Enter the number of people, including yourself, who will be living or staying at this address on April 1st, 2020. Click on the underlined blue links for help with the questions. Make sure that you count people where they usually live and sleep. If someone does not have a usual residence, count them where they will be staying on April 1st. Include babies and children of all ages, close or extended family members, people who are not related to you, and people staying here without a permanent place to live. Do not include anyone who lives away from this address most of the year, such as college students, armed forces personnel, people in a nursing home, mental hospital, jail, prison, detention center, etc., or people visiting who usually live and sleep somewhere else. These people will be counted in other ways. Then, list the name of each person living or staying at this address. To add more people, select the button labeled Add Another Person. We do not want to miss any people staying at this address on April 1st. If you forgot to include anyone who stays here, choose Yes and enter those names. Otherwise, choose No. Now you're ready for the next two questions about the home at this address. On April 1st, will the house, apartment, or mobile home at this address be owned by you or someone in this household with a mortgage or loan, including home equity loans? Owned by you or someone in this household free and clear without a mortgage or loan, rented, or occupied without payment of rent. Then, select the names of the owners or renters of this house, apartment, or mobile home. Next, we ask some questions about each person you listed earlier. First, we ask if the person is male or female. We also ask you to enter the month, day, and year this person was born. Make sure that the age that appears is correct as of April 1st, 2020. Next, we ask about Hispanic origin and race. Please answer both this and the next question. Select whether this person is not of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, Mexican, Mexican-American, or Chicano, Puerto Rican, Cuban, or another Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. If you selected the last response, enter more details in the box below. Next, we ask about race. Select one or more checkboxes. White, Black or African American, American Indian or Alaska Native, Chinese, Filipino, Asian Indian, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, other Asian, Native Hawaiian, Samoan, Chamorro, other Pacific Islander, or some other race. Enter detailed origins in the boxes that look like this. Additional people will also see this question. How is this person related to the reference person? Select opposite-sex husband, wife, or spouse, opposite-sex unmarried partner, same-sex husband, wife, or spouse, same-sex unmarried partner, biological son or daughter, adopted son or daughter, stepson or stepdaughter, brother or sister, father or mother, grandchild, parent-in-law, son-in-law or daughter-in-law, other relative, roommate or housemate, foster child, or other non-relative. We're almost finished. Some people live or stay in more than one place, and we need to make sure everyone is only counted once. Select the name of anyone who usually lives or stays somewhere else. Otherwise, choose none of the above. If a person does usually live or stay somewhere else, select the reason why from the following: to be with a parent, grandparent, or other person, to attend college, for a military assignment, to be closer to a job or business, in a nursing home or group home, in a jail or prison, at a seasonal or second residence, or for another reason. Great job. You are now ready to send your responses. Select Submit Questionnaire to complete the 2020 census. You will see a confirmation page with your address and today's date. That's it. You have completed the 2020 census online. Thank you. You may now close the web browser. To share this video or similar videos in other languages, please visit 2020census.gov/languages.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly.
Mark, are you great? Because you'll be the next person to go. That sounds like a plan. So we still got a few minutes. We'll make sure you're still damn ready. If you want to watch it on your phone or something, I think that would probably just make sure that if there is a lot of sound coming through, and probably so you don't get going back and forth.
Okay, now how do I go back?
No, I have pulled up on another screen.
Oh.
So there you go. And good now.
Good morning. I'm Robbie Kopp, the Director of Advocacy and Community Access at Able, South Carolina. Welcome to Advocacy Day 2020. We are meeting online because we are forbidden by law to gather in groups larger than 3. And at our state capitol in Columbia, there is now a stay-at-home order due to coronavirus. So we are taking Advocacy Day live online. We want to make sure that you, the participant, have all the tools and the information that you need to be a strong advocate, a strong voice for disability rights in South Carolina. Advocacy Day for Access and Independence is a joint operation of 26 partner organizations that believe in disability rights and equity in South Carolina. We know that with this shift to an online platform, we have a huge opportunity to welcome the disability community across the country and world to South Carolina and to the issues that we are addressing in disability rights. For us, today is a day for disability rights. Nationally, today is a day for us to bind together and make sure that the voice of the disability community is heard. And globally, today is a day that we take a special care and send a watchful eye on rationed medical care during the coronavirus and make sure that everyone has access to the services that they need to weather this event well. Today is going to be a day unlike we've been able to celebrate so far in disability rights. We're so excited to welcome all of you. I do want to encourage you at every possible juncture to participate in all of the activities that we'll have going on as part of Advocacy Day. If you are watching on Facebook, if you are watching on Twitter, or if you are watching on YouTube, take a moment and help us out. Please share this stream right now on your own page to make sure that we are looping in disability rights voices and allies across the world now together with one voice. We're at 10:30 a.m. local time in South Carolina. If you are in another time zone, in the chat, tell us where your time zone is, how far ahead, how far behind, how early did you have to get up to participate with us this morning. Other times during the day, we'll also focus on specific actions that we can take collectively to further disability rights here in South Carolina and across the United States. So first, I want to tell you that your voice can be heard even though we cannot gather physically together. We are going to be sharing actions around COVID-19, adding the voice of all the participants on this live stream to the Disability Demands hashtag. That's hashtag Disability Demands. We will be sharing a way to contact your federal representation to make sure that they know all decisions that are made around addressing this virus have to include the needs of the disability community. We cannot be overlooked. We cannot be rationed away from medical services or care. Food delivery needs to happen equally for everyone, and we all deserve access to the same quality of information for the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. So that's going to be our first action. We'll tease it some more as we get closer to. The second targeted action is going to be focused on employment first. The South Carolina chapter of APSE, Association of People Supporting Employment First, has put together an Employment First pledge. We'll be sharing that so folks can add their names on the dotted line saying that we support employment first, that is competitive and integrated employment for people with disabilities, and an end to subminimum wage. We have one more action, and this action is so important right now, and it's becoming harder and harder to get out in front of people because we are so actively responding to COVID-19. But we cannot forget that this is a census year. In 2020, we have an opportunity to be counted. We have an opportunity to say that the disability community counts, both here in South Carolina and across the country. Please take the moment that you have today while viewing online. If you have not completed your questionnaire yet, please complete it. If you go to complete your census questionnaire and you need some extra help or extra support, that's cool. Give us a call at Able South Carolina. We'll help South Carolina residents, and we'll get folks from outside the state connected with resources to complete the census well. You may ask yourself, why is the census so important? We've got other things going on. I hear that concern. The truth is, The census and the counts that are taken from the census have long-term impacts on the communities that we live in. One of those impacts is transportation. We're going to spend some time digging into some of the transportation barriers present here in South Carolina. If you see some of those barriers where you live, I'd encourage you to chime in and participate in that online conversation. But transportation dollars are allocated based on census numbers. So we want to make sure that our counts are accurate. Other financial resources that come through census include SNAP benefits and often Medicaid dollars and other really vital, life-sustaining, important programs that we want to make sure each state gets their fair shot. So please hear me when I say the census is for you. Today is a day to be counted and to further the work of our communities through transportation and supportive resources and many other things. So don't miss out. Now is the time to complete the census. I do want to make a quick note. Everything is really is tainted, maybe the wrong word, but everything is being touched by coronavirus right now. So I want to tell you, when it comes time for the census, when it comes time for those census workers to go door to door collecting your surveys, please help support the safety of their work by completing your census questionnaire right now. Now is a great time to do it to help keep people from having to go door to door. The last part of the census, a quick note that I want to make, we've had folks completing it. We completed it on day one in my household. It was super simple and easy to do. I think it took a total of maybe 9.5 minutes. So with the census, I want to inform you, if you have a disability, that's cool. The census isn't going to ask you about that. So you will not find a disability question. But what is important is that the disability community still count. We will not have a disability count from the census. We'll have a population count, but we need to make sure that our community is counted alongside everyone else. Don't miss the opportunity. There are some other things to know about the census that are really important. Federal employees who work the census are personally barred from sharing your private demographic information, which is pretty good to know. That means your information can't be shared or used for nefarious purposes. It is released after 72 years, but I doubt we'll be worrying about that too much by then, and they'll just know some of our basic demographics. So please complete the census and participate. I want to help set the stage for you for the rest of Advocacy Day and how this is going to work online. I've already told you that we have an opportunity to participate online with ongoing conversations. So please participate in the chat, share your story, share how disability rights impact you, and share your call for equity in our communities. Next, please pay close attention to the issues that we're seeing in South Carolina. If you are viewing from another state, your story still matters. You may find that the work that is taking place in South Carolina or the way that we framed our issues can be beneficial to you otherwise. I also want to let you know that there's going to be opportunity to hear from rights allies, both from inside and outside the disability community, and we're going to focus on action. With that, we are going to transition to our next speaker. So please be ready, share now. It's a great time to share it, and we'll continue rolling with Advocacy Day for Access and Independence 2020. Thanks so much for joining us.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC. Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
All right.
Derek, you're on mute.
Shamia Roser is a graduate of Lander University, where she earned her psychology degree. She's excited to mentor individuals with disabilities on their journey deeper into disability pride. Derek Means is a graduate of the University of South Carolina. He currently works as an assistant librarian and serves on the South Carolina Developmental Disabilities Council. Take it away, y'all.
I'm sure many of you have stopped at Spinks to get gas, take a restroom break, or just to get a snack. But have you ever taken a moment to look up and notice what Spink's slogan is? Their slogan is making life easier. Now take a moment to analyze that. That phrase carries a lot of weight in the disability community because who doesn't want their life to be easier? But for those of us with a disability, it can be often hard to get what we need. We have to fight a little harder in order to be able to live independently and contribute to society. That includes finding employment at a fair wage to live that life. Employment in South Carolina is a problem for those in the disability community, as South Carolina is missing a vital opportunity to not only promote inclusivity in over 92,000 positions, but to hire those that bring that inclusivity to the company.
As someone with a disability, I know firsthand what it feels like to be passed over for a job, just like I know the value I can bring to an organization that hires me. But these companies don't. It is our job to educate these companies to aid in breaking down those barriers in, in employment, such as we don't work as hard or costly to accommodate our needs, all of which is not true. What is true is that we deserve the same opportunity to work just like those without disabilities. It's time for employers to welcome all inclusive and, and accepting features where they hire individuals with disabilities because we are able and capable. We are equal and ready in a really good investment. It is time to let our local officials know that we want to work, we can contribute to society. Let's raise our voice as one. Let's fight for our dreams and our goals and prove over and over again that people with disabilities does not change these dreams or goals. All right.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
I'm on.
Our next speaker is Mark Johnson. Mark has been involved with the independent living movement since 1977. He's advocated for the disability community as a founder of the disability rights organization ADAPT in 1983. He served as the director of advocacy at the Shepherd Center Atlanta as well. While he claims to be retired, he currently serves as the chair of the ADA Legacy Project. Mark joins us from home in Greenville, South Carolina. Help me welcome him to the spotlight.
Good morning, fellow advocates and allies. Thank you, Robbie. I also want to thank Tiffany and the other organizers, speakers, and all today's participants. I retired from Shepherd Center in March of last year. My wife, Susan, and I moved from Atlanta to South Carolina in December. My daughter and son-in-law live in Simpsonville, South Carolina in the Five Forks community. As a kid, my family used to vacation at Windy Hill Beach. Since then, I've made many trips to Lake Hartwell and purchased peaches in the Gaffney area on my way to Charlotte, North Carolina to visit my family. For over 15 plus years, I've made several trips to Charleston and Beaufort to visit our colleagues Paul and Kelly Timmons and enjoy the history of the area. I love the stories in the Blue Ridge Co-op monthly publication about the people of South Carolina. I guess you could say I had some South Carolina blood in my system before I actually moved here. As someone who has been involved since the 70s and participated in the passage of ADA, I know what's possible. As we all deal with the pandemic, we're learning what's possible. We truly are in this together. I was asked to talk about public access. I'm 68 and been using a wheelchair for almost 50 years. When I sustained my spinal cord injury, building codes didn't include accessible features. In fact, I remember creating accessible parking places by taking two places. Slowly but surely, we've learned universal design and accessibility aren't choices, they're an imperative. So what's the status of accessibility in South Carolina? 30 years after the passage of the ADA, many South Carolina state agencies do not have ADA coordinators. 30 years after the passage of ADA, building codes aren't always followed. 30 years after the passage of ADA, public information and communications often leave out individuals who may rely on alternative formats like large print, braille, sign language, auditory description, or simplified language. 30 years after the passage of ADA, physical barriers continue to limit the disability community's voice in elections. Disabled people shouldn't have to wait any longer for leadership to make accessibility a priority. In fact, I'd say it's more important than ever. I look forward to learning who our allies are. More information about these barriers and solutions are at unlockingbarriers-southcarolina.org. Again, let me say thanks, and I look forward to Judy's send-off later in the morning. Happy ADA 30. And if you haven't made the time to watch Crip Camp on Netflix, please do and join the conversation. Again, thank you for including this new timer, this new resident of South Carolina in this important day.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Audience question: what does a barrier-free SC mean to you? Let us know in the comments. Hashtag barrier-free-SC.
Okay, I think you're good, 7. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Ebony Deloach. She is a individual advocate and is a real power when it comes to advocating for disability rights. She has participated in emergency preparedness activities and is an activist regularly around transportation access and making sure folks can get where they need to go in order to participate in the community. I'll turn things over now to Ebony Deloach.
My name is Ebony Deloach. I'm an active resident of Jasper County, South Carolina. I'm a graduate of the Community Leadership Academy. Today, I'm here to speak to you about a barrier many people with disabilities face: access to affordable and accessible transportation. For people with disabilities, transportation is the key to independence and community participation. The only options for people with disabilities are traditional bus, known as fixed route, or door-to-door, known as paratransit. But what if your town or county is not on a fixed route system? In Jasper County, like many other areas in South Carolina, public transportation services are not available. Accessibility is only one barrier to transportation. People with and without disabilities face difficulty finding affordable transportation options. Private mobility agencies and rideshare companies that provide solutions for people like me who live in areas that are underserved by public transportation are often costly and in times of crisis are not required to be available. To make affordable and accessible transportation a reality, there needs to be investments in infrastructure that will embrace complete street standards for those that are pedestrians and those that utilize community transit. There also needs to be funding that supports outreach for the public in South Carolina so that they are made aware of the 27 public transportation authorities that serve them across the state of South Carolina. To me, a barrier-free SC means access to affordable and accessible transportation. Join me in contacting our governor and state legislators and say, let's make our state a barrier-free SC. Thank you.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be with us shortly. Hashtag barrier-free-SC.
Our next speaker is Marcy Roth. She's the CEO of the World Institute on Disability and is a global expert on the rights of people with disabilities before, during, and after disasters. She's been active in independent living since 1982. She established the FEMA Office on Disability Integration and Coordination and the Partnership for Inclusive Disaster Strategies before joining World Institute on Disability. She's been a help to us in South Carolina, and it's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Marcy Roth.
Thank you very much, Robbie. And hello, South Carolina. I wish I was with you. I have, I was going to call them fond memories. I have vivid memories of my time in South Carolina after the horrific flooding in 2015. And I got to see Able, South Carolina in action when I was there with you all for several months deployed to Columbia. I am really proud of the leadership that you all are showing, and in fact, bringing folks together in this way in the midst of this horrific period in our lives. Big kudos for keeping people together. I have a message for you all that is both, I think, extremely important and very difficult. And that is that we have been fighting for our rights as people with disabilities for many, 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 many years. For those of you who haven't yet seen Crip Camp, I strongly encourage you to watch the earliest roots of our powerful fight for our rights. Here we are almost 50 years after the passage of the Rehabilitation Act and 30 years after the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And right now, the rights of people with disabilities, which should never be waived in a disaster, are being trampled on because people with disabilities are being considered to be more eligible for rationing of care during the COVID-19 pandemic. People with disabilities are under waivers from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid that allow states to move us directly into nursing homes, despite the fact that the Department of Justice has said there are no waivers to the rights of people with disabilities even in a disaster. Our civil rights, we've fought hard for them, and we need to keep fighting to make sure that they aren't taken from us. We need to stand together. We need to never give up, never give in. I look to you, leaders in South Carolina, to take a very strong stand for the COVID-19 pandemic and for any other disasters moving forward. You all have had your share of experience with disasters. We cannot allow our hard-fought, hard-won civil rights be taken from us. Lead on, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all and look forward to being with you in person at next year's Advocacy Day.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. #BarrierFreeSC.
Are y'all ready? Okay.
Thank you, Marcy, so much for that message. We are also taking action right now through social media following a targeted action on COVID-19. So check out the comments and participate. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson was elected South Carolina's 51st Attorney General on November 2nd, 2010, and is now serving his third term. Previously, he has led a prosecution division intern under Charlie Condon and as an assistant attorney general under Henry McMaster. As South Carolina's Attorney General, Alan Wilson is the state's chief prosecutor, chief securities officer, and the state's chief legal counsel. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Attorney General Alan Wilson. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It is great to be with everyone, even though we are virtually together. We are standing together strong and firm. I know it's a very difficult time, not only for the world and our nation, but this state and especially this community. I wanted to say the theme of my comments and my remarks to everyone today who's watching out there is perseverance. We have got to persevere. But when I look at the community that I'm talking to right now, people with disabilities, people who have learned to persevere, even when many of us take for granted the day-to-day routines that we've gotten accustomed to. You have learned to overcome hardships in your own individual lives because of whatever disability you may have. And I want you to know that people like me are looking up to you right now because you really are an inspiration to me. And a lot of people that I've talked to in the community of people with disabilities have told me that their whole lives they've been told they couldn't do something, and they've found a way to work around it, found a way to overcome that setback, which is very much what we're doing right now at this rally online, learning how to overcome people telling you you can't do something. And that's what people like me are kind of trying to figure out right now. How do we overcome what we're going through? I want to tell you a story that I love to tell about perseverance. And it's a story that I'm very fascinated by because I know a person that lives in South Carolina who grew up in the 60s, went to college in the 60s, and he told me the story of when he went to Ripon College in the 1960s. He had a fraternity brother, a good guy who was really good with his hands, really good in carpentry, mechanics, things of that nature, kind of a roughneck, if you will, a football player, and a good all-around guy that everyone loved to party with and go out with. Well, this individual, his name was Harry. Harry came up to my friend one day and said, hey, I think I want to go into acting. And my friend was like, well, that's great. In fact, Harry even said that I wanted to be the best actor to ever come out of this college. And my friend told me that he informed his fraternity brother, Harry, that, well, 30 years earlier, we had another actor come out of here, Spencer Tracy, who had gone on to film a lot of very famous movies of the day, and I think had 2 of the top 10 all-time grossing motion pictures in Hollywood. And he says, you're going to have a hard time overcoming that. Well, Harry decided to join the local college community theater and star in the title role of King Lear. And he played the title role. And Harry invited all of his fraternity brothers there, and they all came and watched him. And they watched him perform the role. And my friend said that Harry was absolutely horrible. He could not act his way out of a paper bag, that it was just embarrassing to watch. But they went there and they applauded when they were supposed to. When the play was over, Harry came and they all went out to eat afterwards, and they were sitting around the table having a beverage. And Harry asked my friend and all of the other fraternity brothers there, he goes, what did y'all think? How did I do? And as fraternity brothers and college friends are known to do, they kind of gave him a hard time. They said, Harry, you are not an actor. This is not your gift. You can't do this. And they pretty much said, you need to find another calling because you just don't have the ability to be a good actor. And Harry, kind of feeling dejected, hung his head and just kind of accepted it, and eventually left college, I think a little early, and drove out west to be a carpenter. I believe he went to California. And so my friend and I were talking at the end of the story. I said, whatever happened to Harry? And he said, well, Alan, I'm glad you asked me that question. You don't know him as Harry. He went on to become one of the all-time highest grossing movie stars in Hollywood history. He played roles Han Solo, He was in Patriot games. You know him as Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones. And so Harry was Harrison Ford at the time. And what I took away from that story is that he was told by a lot of people that he couldn't do something and that he wasn't good at it, or he didn't have the ability to do something. But he did not allow that rejection to control him. He actually determined that he was going to rise above their disbelief in his abilities, and he was going to overcome it, and he was going to persevere. And that's what Harry, now Harrison Ford, did. He persevered and became one of the highest grossing action movie stars in Hollywood history. I tell you that to tell you this. There's a lot going on in the world right now. There's a lot of things, the COVID-19, the pandemic, the national emergency declaration, the state declarations that are going on, a lot of rules coming down. People are being told they can't do things, and we're having to figure out a way to work around what we've taken for granted in our society. You all, many of you have learned to do that for many, many years now. You have had to not take for granted the things that we do, and you've had to find workarounds. And people like me really applaud you and appreciate that so many people with disabilities have learned to overcome their disability and be normal, everyday, productive citizens of our communities in our state. And I just want to say I applaud you for that. We look up to you. We appreciate you. And the one thing the government can do is it can get out of your way and try to support those things which remove barriers to you coming into our society, barriers to you from being involved in our economy, because this community has a lot to offer to the state of South Carolina and the nation at large. And anything that I can do as Attorney General to help you continue persevering like Harrison Ford so that you can be the very best you can be in our society, in our state, and this entire community, because you are important members of this community. And as difficult as the COVID-19 pandemic is right now, we are learning that we can do things we never dreamed of, like have a virtual rally like this, so that we can continue to spread the word and encourage people all around South Carolina. If my office can ever do anything for you as an individual, as a citizen, or as a corporate organization, please don't hesitate to reach out. We will persevere through this very difficult time. We will overcome, and we will all be able to assemble again at the State House next year and really embrace one another as brothers and sisters and South Carolinians. And I thank you for allowing me to participate in this online virtual rally. I'm honored to be your Attorney General. Thank you for allowing me to serve you in this capacity. And don't ever hesitate to reach out to me if I can serve you in any way. Thank you, and God bless everyone here.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Audience question. Have you completed the 2020 census yet? Let us know in the comments below. #BarrierFreeSC.
Thank you so much, Attorney General. Our state and our society is learning to adapt, as the disability community knows very well on how to do. I do want to excitedly share our next speaker. This is Mr. Rob Sneed. He is an assistant U.S. attorney with the U.S. Attorney's Office. The United States Attorney is a chief federal law enforcement officer responsible for federal criminal prosecutions and civil litigation involving the United States in South Carolina. Speaking today is Assistant U.S. Attorney Rob Sneed. He is assigned to the Civil Division. He works as the Affirmative Civil Rights Coordinator in the office, spends a great deal of time looking at the Americans with Disabilities Act and enforcing its regulations. He is a graduate of the USC School of Law and is a veteran of both the U.S. Navy and U.S. Army. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rob Sneed.
Good morning. I'm Rob Sneed. I want to thank Able, South Carolina for giving me the opportunity to be here today and for putting on such a wonderful event. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, turns 30 this year. And please remember that the ADA is the most significant piece of civil rights legislation in this country in nearly 60 years. Refreshingly and remarkably, The ADA has always enjoyed widespread bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans. Of course, the ADA did not start with our elected officials from on high in Washington, D.C. No, it started with people like you, people working tirelessly to achieve their goals. Here's a question for you. As the ADA enters its 4th decade, is the work done? Do people with disabilities have the same opportunity to participate in American life as other people? Are the barriers torn down? Of course, the answer to this is no. All right, I want to talk about the ADA and voting for just a moment. In South Carolina, you can vote just about every year, it seems. You can vote for president every 4 years, the U.S. House of Representatives every 2 years, 1/3 the U.S. Senate every 2 years. And then if you factor in all the state and local elections, there are a lot of elections in South Carolina for people to have the opportunity to vote. And how important is voting? It's a hallmark of American democracy. It's a fundamental right. Most Americans, whether they have a disability or not, would prefer to vote live in person on election day. But the people in the disability community, how about those people voting? If the ADA has been around for 30 years, and there's other federal laws protecting the rights of people with disabilities to vote, but after 30 years of the ADA, if a person with a disability goes to a polling place, are they always going to find accessible parking and curb cuts? Are they going to find accessible sidewalks and ramps? Are they going to find accessible entrance doors? Of course, the answer is no. Once inside the polling station, will a person with a disability, will they always find an accessible hallway or route? Or inside the voting area, will they find accessible or adequate maneuvering space? Will the machine itself be accessible? No. Are the barriers to voting torn down? No, they are not. In 2015, that's the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office, launched the ADA Voting Initiative. The goal is that people with disabilities have an equal opportunity to vote and participate in the voting process the same as everyone else. Today, we have opened more than 50 ADA polling investigations across the country. And yes, that includes the state of South Carolina. There are 2 of the larger counties our office has surveyed their polling places, and we have an ADA agreement in place. That's Richland and Anderson County. One of those started in 2016, the other 2018. We have 2 other counties in the state where we have open investigations. The next time you vote, whether it's a primary election or a general election, and there's a barrier to voting, please report it. Please report it to either the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Department of Justice. We will investigate it. We will evaluate it. I want to say a quick word about ADA coordinators. Who is required to have an ADA coordinator? Public entity, that means a state or local agency that has 50 or more employees, is required to have an ADA coordinator. What's the coordinator's job? Their job is to be the contact point, investigate complaints, and coordinate ADA issues for that public entity. In conclusion, we will continue, and I say we, I mean the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office will continue to play a central role in advancing our nation's goal of equal opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for people with disabilities. We'll continue to use all the tools at our disposal to eliminate unlawful discrimination against people with disabilities. Thank you.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. #BarrierFreeSC.
want to make a quick note that here in South Carolina, we work hard to include people with and without disabilities to make sure that we're driving the conversation and increasing access. This work is so important because it relies on so many people, whether that is the U.S. Attorney's Office or whether that is the Attorney General's office. Folks in different places and different roles are all working as allies towards disability rights and access. Next, our speaker is Ms. Grace Trumpauer. Grace is an equip leader here at Able, South Carolina, and she is serving the the Lancaster Fort Mill area. She is also a passionate disability community and independent living advocate online and loves to write for the Equip blog. Please join me in welcoming Grace Trumpauer.
When I was in kindergarten, I went to a school for children with disabilities where we were not treated very well. One day, a friend of mine had a muscle spasm and she accidentally grazed the face of the kid next to her. They put her in the corner for hitting. They unplugged her wheelchair so that she could not move and left her in the classroom all alone while we went to lunch and recess. She did not eat or go to the bathroom all day. I tried to help her by plugging her wheelchair back in, but they put me in the corner, too. I was furious. I didn't know any words like ableism or discrimination, but I did know that I didn't like the way we were being treated. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. So I told my parents. My parents told some more people who told some more people who told the news, and eventually the school got shut down for child endangerment and abuse of a vulnerable population. That was my first experience with self-advocacy. I tell this story because Miss Tiffany asked me to write about self-advocacy and disability pride. I think that story really illustrates both the simplicity and the strength behind those two concepts. Self-advocacy is speaking up for yourself and others when you see something unfair, and disability pride is knowing that you deserve to be treated fairly. Another key to self-advocacy is knowing your own worth. When I was young, I used to say things like, people like me don't get married. People like me don't get to go to college. People like me don't have good jobs. But we do those things, and we deserve to do those things too. Sometimes people say, why should I be proud of my disabilities when I didn't do anything? But that is not what disability pride is about. Pride is the consciousness of your own dignity. You, as a person with a disability, you have the same rights as anybody else. Don't let anyone tell you different. Don't apologize for your needs or feel guilty about asking for accommodations. We are not asking for too much. We deserve good jobs. We deserve real work and competitive wages. We deserve transportation that allows us to be productive in the community. We deserve our own homes and our own families. We deserve to knock down these barriers. So let's do it. Anyone can be a self-advocate. It does not have to be done using words. Sometimes speaking up for yourself is done by sitting in the hallway and refusing to move. Sometimes it is done by speaking to a group of people to educate them. Self-advocacy can take any form. People try to take away that power by calling it a challenging behavior or saying that we are being difficult. Don't let them do that. Recognize the call for justice and respond. Come together and fight for your community in whatever way you can. Maybe you can't go to marches or write a speech. But everyone has talents, and everyone can contribute. No contribution is ever too small. People might try to make you feel bad about not doing a specific type of advocacy, but remember that what you can do is important, and your advocacy matters. We all matter.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Audience question. Have you completed the 2020 census yet? Let us know in the comments below. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
Our next speaker is Mr. David Bundy. David is an assistive technology consultant for the South Carolina Commission for the Blind, where he has served for 19 years. He has served for over 20 years on South Carolina Access and South Carolina Information Technology, which is called ASCIT. I'm going to say it again because it's the Access South Carolina Information Technology, ASCIT, that we're really proud of, advancing digital accessibility. He's also served in the National Federation of the Blind of South Carolina for 30 years in different roles. Please join me in welcoming Mr. David Bundy.
Thank you, Robbie. They've asked me to speak to you a little bit about digital access. And digital access is something we should be thinking about every day, but with everybody right now doing more online and remotely, we need to be paying especially close attention to that. We've made a lot of progress in the last however many years that I've been doing things here, but we still have a ways to go. We still get PDFs that are pictures of a page. We need to make sure that when we do things, we keep accessibility in mind and realize that a screen reader can't read a picture. We need to think about when we're posting things, videos, that they need to be captioned or have an interpreter, something, because not everybody can hear the audio. When you're designing a web page, make sure that it's not overly busy. I mean, you can meet all your accessibility standards and still have a totally unusable website, because if it's too busy, as a screen reader user, I'm not going to go through every link on the page to find what I'm looking for. Another thing is your links need to be labeled properly. You know, click here, click here, click here doesn't do a whole lot for me if I brought up a list of links. You want to make sure that that link is distinct, descriptive. If you've got pictures that relay information, you might make sure that they're tagged properly so that as a screen reader user, I can see what's in that picture. Tables and graphs, make sure you describe what's in there. And I don't think they wanted me to give you a step-by-step on how to do it. We just want to make sure that we stay conscious of it and make sure that everybody has access to what you're trying to do. And really, to quote one of my favorite people, Forrest Gump, that's really all I've got to say about that. So I want to thank Robbie and the others for inviting me, and thank you.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
Hello, and on behalf of Molly Spearman, our State Superintendent of Education, and all of us at the South Carolina Department of Education, thank you for joining the 2020 Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Today, I join you virtually from my home during an unprecedented historic event that has changed the landscape of public education across America, namely the near national shutdown of our public schools during this COVID-19 pandemic. During recent weeks, we have seen heroic efforts on the part of our schools and teachers. In South Carolina alone, we've served hundreds of thousands of meals to students. We have installed and deployed our school bus fleet with Wi-Fi capabilities so that students across South Carolina can have internet access. Our educators have worked tirelessly to ensure continued learning while schools are closed. We have parents who are balancing work alongside facilitating their children's learning. And we have seen communities come together as we experience this worldwide event. Equally, we have wrestled with situations and now have even more questions to answer and problems to solve. Namely, how do we continue to provide specially designed instruction and related services to our students with disabilities during this unparalleled time? We must make absolute sure that all students are meaningfully engaged and included during this event. I'm proud of our state superintendent's leadership during this and of her and our entire agency's commitment to ensure that all students are included in distance learning as we grapple with the reality of our world. I'm in awe of the hard work and the dedication of our district superintendents, principals, and teachers as they have worked untiringly to meet not only the academic needs, but the social, emotional, and nutritional needs of our students. Our educators at the state, the district, and the school level are working to ensure all students have access to continued educational opportunities. Put simply, they're doing what they do best: problem solving, being creative, making the best of an unusual situation, figuring out together with parents and children all over the state what this new normal looks like. They are rising to the challenge of learning how to provide educational opportunities and access through different methods: virtual classroom, text, emails, video calls, and telephone calls. They are finding new ways to show parents and children just how much they care, even as they balance their own work, personal lives, and their parenting. Please know that all of us at the Department of Education are committed to supporting educators, parents, and students alike through this experience. The Department of Education's website has been updated to include resources for educators and parents. Our staff are staying connected with National Technical Assistance Centers and are providing direct access to information related to this crisis in our updated website. We're working with disability advocacy groups to extend, expand, and provide access to services and supports for parents and students. Regular communication with stakeholders is occurring through virtual and teleconference means to ensure that concerns and questions are being addressed as quickly as possible. There is a link on the Special Education COVID-19 website for the submission of questions, and we are reviewing those and posting responses to those questions on a weekly basis. Finally, we have convened an advisory group made up of district leaders, university faculty, disability advocates, and our special education staff to look at and provide continued guidance during this time. We know that this has been a disruptive and a scary experience. During this time, I am reminded of one of my childhood heroes, Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers once said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.' To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world." So I say, continue to look for the helpers, and when possible, be the helper. Thank you to Able South Carolina and all of the many partners who are helpers in making sure that this important event continues. And I look forward to seeing you all in person next year at the 2021 Advocacy Day for Access and Independence.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
Next, it is my great pleasure to welcome Representative Neil Collins. Representative Neil Collins serves in the South Carolina State House for District 5 in Pickens County. Representative Collins is an attorney who was born and raised in Easley, South Carolina. He is an Eagle Scout, a graduate of the USC School of Law, an NCAA wrestling official, USPA B licensed skydiver, member of the Easley Chamber of Commerce, and as a clear voice for integrated and competitive employment for South Carolinians with disabilities. Please join me in welcoming Representative Neil Collins.
Well, thank you, Robbie. And also, I think I've joined the Bald Club, so I'm getting used to it now. I thought no better time than when we're in isolation here to try it out. First, I just want to say thank you for participating today. I know this is a wild time. It's been a wild time for all of us legislators. We're basically suspended for session. And I just appreciate you taking your time today. If you're seeing this online live, or if you're watching this later on, that you're taking your time to see all the issues that surround people with disabilities. And I thank you for your advocacy. Without your advocacy, things do not happen. Legislation does not happen. I encourage you, not only on a bill that I'll discuss, but on anything that you've heard earlier today or later today, to use your voice. I can't tell you how many times I've had the pleasure of serving for 6 years now, and I can't tell you how many times one of my colleagues has changed his or her opinion, or has been notified of an issue solely because of one person. So reach out to your representative, reach out to your senator. I encourage you to do so. Secondly, I want to thank Able South Carolina and every nonprofit that is involved, and every organization that is involved in issues surrounding people with disabilities. It is a task, a monumental task to get these issues across, and for everything that Able South Carolina and every other group does. Thank you for your advocacy. So what I wanted to talk about is legislation that is having some movement. A couple of years ago, we had an Employment First Study Committee, a bill passed through the House and Senate, and then a study committee was created. And it basically came back with the same recommendations that we knew beforehand, that we do need to focus on employment for people with disabilities in our state. And I'm excited that the study occurred and that they came out with a report early last year. And we pre-filed a bill, and that bill is House Bill 4768, and you can look at it online. But ultimately, what we want to address is that 70% of our citizens with disabilities are unemployed, and there's a huge gap between those with disabilities and those without unemployment. So we want to close that gap, and what this legislation would do is tell any publicly financed system, and primarily governments is the idea, that we have legislation encouraging that those public entities integrate employment and people with disabilities, and that in their policies and regulations that they are encouraged to look at people with disabilities, maybe not first in priority, but certainly among their policies. And hopefully we can be an example for publicly financed institutions to be an example to the private, and that we encourage private as well to make it a part of your policy to reach out to people with disabilities and the disability communities in within a community, and to focus on that. So that was pre-filed. Unfortunately, it was pre-filed in year 2 of a 2-year cycle. And then even more unfortunate is this whole situation with coronavirus. Everything is pretty much shut down, including this bill. I don't know, as we're sitting here today, what is going to happen, if we're going to go back into session, if we're simply going to go in for a day to pass what we call a continuing resolution to continue government through July, because our state budget ends on June 30th. So I don't know if we're going in for just that. I don't know if we're going to have session. I don't know if we're going to suspend session until the fall. It's just a wild world that we're currently living in. But with that, I'll conclude, and I don't know if we're taking any questions or anything like that, but I just want to end on thank you for your advocacy.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly.
Yes.
Thank you so much for those messages, Representative Collins. We'll continue to watch the access to employment for South Carolinians with disabilities. Our next speaker is Ms. Tanel Jenkins. She will be speaking about life as a disability activist in South Carolina and what she's working on now. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Tanel Jenkins.
Hello, my name is Tanel Jenkins, a member of the Advocacy Committee for the South Carolina Spinal Cord and Sensory Association, and as the Abler, a motivational advocate for the disabled community. I'm here to speak to you today about the barriers persons with disabilities face in housing, employment, and inclusion as a whole. Housing on an emotional level for me is security, comfort, and the reassurance of independency. Housing is a barrier for people with disabilities because of affordability and lack of availability. It is in the best interest of the community that people with disabilities are not homeless, because it shows lack of empathy and importance of something that can happen to anyone at any given time. When people are, they are healthier and have the ability to be more active, contributing members of our society. Employment on an emotional level for me means stability in knowing that I too am a productive member of society and won't have to depend on anyone financially. Employment is a barrier for people with disabilities because they are looked upon as a liability, or that they don't possess the skills or knowledge of holding down a job simply because they are disabled. It's in the best interest of the community that people with disabilities are employed. They are actively contributing to South Carolina's economy. I'm calling on the state of South Carolina to support affordable housing for the people with disabilities, in addition to senior citizens and people with low income, promote inclusive employment, and phase out the sub-minimum wage and transition into support for competitive community-based employment. When these things change, the community as a whole will see economic growth and better longevity. By supporting people with disabilities, we will then see the value of equality and togetherness. I'm calling on you, the disabled community, possibility of being a part of the solution by learning how to advocate and serve on boards and joining communities to offer firsthand input on how things affect the disabled community. So I ask you to join me today in the fight to lifting these barriers in housing and employment by getting in contact with Able SC and see how you can make a difference. Thank you.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag Barrier Free SC.
We are going to continue the calls for accessible or for inclusion in employment. And our next speaker is Mr. Elliot Wilson. Elliot is the president of TRC Staffing Services and TRC Professional Solutions, a full service recruiting firm here in Columbia, South Carolina. He has been a volunteer leader with the Society of Human Resource Managers, also known as SHRM, for almost 20 years. He is currently the Southeast Region Membership Advocacy Council representative for National SHRM. Elliot formerly served as the president of the South Carolina SHRM chapter and is the immediate past director for the South Carolina SHRM State Council. He is a business leader who is raising awareness about disability employment. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Elliot Wilson.
Thanks, Robbie. Good morning, everyone. I'm here today to promote education and awareness as it relates to overcoming the barriers of employing individuals with disabilities. As Robbie said, I am a longtime volunteer with SHRM. SHRM is the Society for Human Resource Management. We are the largest human resource association with over 300,000 members all over the world. We have over 3,000 members just in the state of South Carolina. As he said, I've served on local Columbia roles. I've served on a state council role as the director of the state council, and I now serve in a national Southeast Region MAC role where my job is to take information that we gather from our membership and provide that information directly back to the SHRM Board of Directors and the CEO. We do that in person 4 times a year. Because of the feedback we've received over the years, SHRM has become a tremendous supporter of the education and awareness that drives initiatives supporting the employment of individuals with disabilities. SHRM facilitates this through publications, seminars, and conferences that focus specifically on diversity and inclusion, many times with disability employment initiatives being on the forefront. SHRM on both a local, state, and national level is a huge supporter and is working hard to increase awareness and education for HR professionals as it pertains to the importance of employment initiatives for individuals with disabilities. In my non-volunteer life, as he said, I own TRC. We're a full-service recruiting and staffing firm based in Columbia. We provide employees for companies all over the state and all over the Southeast. And honestly, for years, I've found that I was just very ignorant to the employment initiatives that are out there, a lot of the barriers that people are trying to overcome to support the employment of individuals with disabilities. And a couple of years ago, I really made a conscious decision that I wanted to change that. And so I really got involved with Able SC, with Hire Me SC, which is the South Carolina Disability Employment Coalition, and SHRM in trying to educate myself more on what we could do to become more active in this regard. Because of that, I've become much more educated and feel more empowered to discuss these types of topics and initiatives with my clients as it relates to their recruiting needs and hiring needs. Because of this, I've been able to form relationships with 2 different local and state agencies. These relationships have turned into partnerships that have enabled us to hire individuals with disabilities to work at our client sites. This is the first time this has occurred for us and for these 2 agencies. It was the first time for them ever, but it was the first time for us to be able to make these partnerships happen in our over 20 years of being in business. We would not have been able to do this without the increased awareness and education regarding the amazing abilities and skills that so many of these individuals possess. The depth that they bring to companies is incredible. I encourage everyone to educate themselves and to share the message. That's what we did. We became more aware, more educated, and then educated our clients and continue to do so. It's not easy. A lot of times you have to find the right manager at the company to really fight for to just change the culture. I mean, that's what we're having to do. We're having to convince companies that many times it's very, very minor changes that have to take place inside the organization to create accommodations or an environment that's welcoming and accepting to individuals with disabilities. We have personal examples that I can share where our clients have seen higher productivity and just amazingly positive attitudes from those folks that were given a chance, because many times they've not been given the chance. I think if we all continue working on changing companies' cultures through education and awareness, we can overcome these employment barriers and continue on this mission. Thanks a bunch for this opportunity to be here today, and thank you for having everyone that has come to be a part of it. Thank you.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag barrier-free SC.
Can you hear me?
Our next speaker is Mr. Jason Herdich. He's instructed college-level ASL and interpreting classes since 1993. You may also know him as the rock star interpreter, as he was known by former Governor Nikki Haley, because he clearly rocked interpreting during Hurricane Matthew in 2016. He is currently a lecturer of American Sign Language at Clemson University and is a nationally certified deaf interpreter, CDI, by the Registry of Interpreters of the Deaf, RID. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jason Herdich.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And first of all, I want to thank Able, South Carolina, for having me come to present this morning. It was really an honor for me to be here. And what I would like to do is just give you a scenario of people being looked down on, people that are marginalized, and how they have gained an opportunity. Just imagine, if you will, having a place where they can share their stories and their experiences of not being able to have an interpreter at a doctor's appointment. Being able to share their experience and stories concerning wanting to order food and going through drive-through and the reaction that they get because they're not able to use the intercom to place their order, and the frustration that ensues. This marginalized group of people having a place where they might want to go to the movies and then find out that the caption machine doesn't work. So now you can't enjoy the movie. Having a place where they can talk about how frustrating it is not to be able to find employment because someone won't hire them because they're concerned about supplying accommodations. So having a place where you can talk about just the daily frustration of being denied services and full inclusion in society. So what happened was two gentlemen decided to host the event at a local coffee shop. And they had this discussion and experience in ASL. So these two gentlemen worked along with a local coffee shop to set up a community event. And this was decided to be a free event so that all in the community can participate. And what was supposed to do was to be an intertwining of people getting together to discuss barriers, to share their stories. And what this became, and what we're going to do is have a place where they could have a beacon of hope and learn how to advocate for each other. And this location happened to be the Starbucks in Greenville. The two gentlemen thought that perhaps, maybe if they were lucky, if there were 20 or 30 people would show up. But much to their surprise, 400 deaf people were in attendance the first night that this event was held. Totally unexpected. And this was not a one-time event. This was a monthly event that took place at this local Starbucks in Greenville. And the average attendance would be about 200 a month. So we talked about how to deal with the barriers. And really, Starbucks was really inviting. And they became one of the first places to hire a deaf person to become a barista. So as this information went into the deaf community, that you can learn how to advocate for interpreting services, they can learn how to advocate for themselves, how they can file complaints. So this became not only a get-together, but really an educational event as well. So we can see how we became partners with those who could hear, to see how they learn also that they can learn how to partner with the hearing community in order to get rid of barriers. So we can see how this works. And we talked about equipment, but most importantly, the most that we talked about was how to seek opportunities, find those opportunities, take advantage of opportunities. So after 1 year, we celebrate our 1 year anniversary, the corporate office of Starbucks awarded us the Community Partnership Award to the hearing barista who also assisted us in setting up this event here at the Starbucks in Greenville. So we were hoping this became a place of opportunity. So now imagine yourself in this situation where you're given an opportunity. What will you do? Just imagine. Thank you very much for allowing me to share this story.
Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. #BarrierFreeSC.
Okay, so I just leave the meeting then? No, I just, okay, okay.
Our next speaker is State Senator Katrina Shealy. Senator Katrina Fry Shealy serves as the chairman of the Senate Family and Veteran Services Committee. Senator Shealy was born in Columbia and lives in Lexington County, where she is a wife, mother, grandmother, and insurance consultant. She has served on the board of directors for the Lexington County Department of Social Services, the board of directors for the Girl Scouts of the Congaree, served as chairman for Friends of Juvenile Justice, and currently serves on the board. Senator Shealy has won numerous awards over the course of her community work and service, notably earning the 2015 National Association of Social Workers Legislator of the Year and the 2017 Respectable Award from Able, South Carolina. She champions disability rights, women's rights, and intersectional rights movements, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Senator Katrina Shealy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. As always, it's an honor to be part of Advocacy Day. Although this year it's just a little bit different. We're not only addressing disabilities, but the disability community, as always, they have challenges, but they don't want anything special. They just want to be treated equally. And this year their challenges are a lot different than every other year. It's a lot harder when we have the COVID-19 virus has set up a whole different set of challenges for the disability community. We continue in South Carolina to address equal access to governmental programs and to transportation, to employment, and to every other right. Everyone in the disability community just wants to be treated equally. And that's what we're working to get. I want us all to work together to make sure that everyone is equal. Whether you have a disability or not, everyone should be treated equally. I hope that during these difficult times that God will bless you and that you'll stay safe, and that everyone knows that if there's any problem, if the disability community or anyone has any problems, that they can feel free to contact my office. Now, we're still answering the phones. It may look like nobody's at the State House or nobody's out and about, but we're still answering our phones, and we're still there to help you if you need anything. So please contact us if we can do anything to help you. So please stay safe, stay inside, don't get out, don't stay 6 feet away from everybody, don't be shaking hands, don't be touching your face. You've heard the governor 1,000 times say that. So please, take care of yourselves. And there's not a lot else I can say that everybody else hasn't said. Just know that we care about you. We want to do what's right for you. We want you to be treated equally, just like everybody else. So we're running a little behind, so they told me to cut this short. So I'm going to cut it short and just tell you that God bless you and take care of yourself. Thank you and have a great day.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag barrier-free SC.
Ready? I'm ready.
We've had speakers so far comment on how important it is to participate in voting and some of the barriers that folks may have come in contact with at the polls. Our next speaker is going to share from the South Carolina Election Commission and talk about access to voting. We have Mr. Chris Whitmire. He is the Director of Public Information for the South Carolina Election Commission, where he has served South Carolinians through numerous roles since 2005. Some of his current duties include being the agency spokesperson. He works hard on voter outreach and education, develops voter registration initiatives and elections policy and procedures and special events. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Chris Whitmire. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Abel for the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to be here. It's a little different, but we're all learning this together. So first, I just want to say what our mission is, and that's to ensure every eligible citizen has the opportunity to register to vote and to participate in fair and impartial elections with the assurance that their vote will count. And so we can't accomplish our mission unless we ensure that elections are accessible to all voters. And accessible to us means that voters are able to vote and participate in elections independently without assistance. So we do that by working to ensure physical polling places are accessible and working to provide voters with as many options as possible to register to vote and to cast their ballot. And so we encourage anyone who experiences any sort of barrier in the voter registration and voting process to let us know. We want to know about it because voters in all respects are the best judge of what works best. And many times the county election officials won't know about an issue unless they hear from you. So we encourage you to reach out, and particularly to your county election officials and to the state election commission if you need to do that as well. So one of the most significant recent changes is the new statewide paper-based voting system. It includes ballot marking devices and scanners. The new system was carefully selected with input from accessibility experts. And it's a significant improvement over the old system in many ways. With the old system, each polling place only had one accessible device. Now, all devices in the polling places have the same accessibility features. And those features include an audio tactile braille embossed keypad controller, a headphone jack that has a voice that is a commonly used recognizable voice, an input for a sip and puff device and other assistive switches, a high contrast mode for that's a white text on black screen high contrast mode, a zoom function for larger text, and all of the devices are designed to sit at table height for wheelchair access. And so that's the new voting system, a lot of new important accessibility features that come with that. Voters with disabilities also have the option of voting curbside at the polling place. And so we work hard to ensure every polling place has a curbside voting parking space, and those spaces are monitored by poll managers. And when you pull into that parking space, the poll manager will greet you, check your ID, sign you in, and you're put into the queue to vote. And when it's your turn to vote, two poll managers will bring out the ballot marking device. You'll mark your ballot right there in the car. You'll then place your ballot into a privacy sleeve, and the two poll managers then take that privacy sleeve into the polling place and put your ballot into a scanner. Absentee voting is also an option. This can be done by mail or in person at the county voter registration office. So that's what's going on at the State Election Commission. And I also want to take a moment to talk about elections in the current coronavirus environment. So as the coronavirus continues to spread across the country in South Carolina, we're concerned about how we will conduct elections this year, the June primaries, the November general election, all of the elections. The governor has already postponed March and April elections. Those have been postponed indefinitely. We believe they'll be rescheduled for later this year. But the main issue is that our elections, as they are currently prescribed by law, require large numbers of people to congregate in one place, which is something that everyone is currently being asked not to do. So compounding that issue is that a large percentage of the state's poll managers fall into high risk categories, which will likely lead to a deficit of poll managers later this year. So in order to take action to be able to safely and securely conduct elections during this coronavirus pandemic, we are asking the governor and the South Carolina General Assembly to give consideration to making several changes to our election process. And we're offering an array of ideas for lawmakers and the governor to consider to be able to help us conduct elections in this current environment. Uh, and those include allowing no excuse absentee voting. So currently you have to meet one of 18 reasons. Having a disability is currently one of the reasons, but self-isolating due to a pandemic is not one. So we want to, so the idea there is to remove the excuses from the absentee process and open the absentee process to everyone. Uh, Another idea is to allow applications for absentee ballots to be submitted electronically online. So similar to online voter registration, you could go online, apply for your absentee ballot, never have to print anything, never have to sign the application. You can do it online, and then the next thing that would happen would be you would receive your ballot in the mail. Another idea is to remove the witness requirement from the absentee envelope, the return envelope. Right now, when you vote absentee by mail, you have to sign the envelope as well as a witness. And finding a witness may be something that it would be a barrier to someone who is self-isolating due to the pandemic. So something else that we're looking at, and we were really looking at this prior to the coronavirus pandemic, is to allow voters with disabilities, and now in the coronavirus pandemic, allowing also first responders and medical personnel, but to allow voters with disabilities to use our existing electronic ballot delivery tool. So this is something we currently have in place. It is used for military voters and used for overseas voters. And what that is that the voter can just go to our website and access their ballot. They can go on their own, get their ballot online. They can mark it online. A voter with disabilities could use their own computer with the accessibility features that they have on their own computer to access their ballot, mark it. It would require printing out the ballot and then sending it in, but you would also be able to send it in electronically by email or fax or also to mail it in. But the big idea is that you would cut out the application process, you would cut out the process of us having to send you the ballot, and you could go get it yourself using the accessibility features that you likely already have on your computer. So um, those are some of the ideas around absentee voting that we've submitted to the General Assembly. We've also submitted ideas including early voting in vote centers. And the idea there is that anyone could go vote early at a vote center during a period of time prior to an election, possibly weeks. And the idea there is to spread out the vote over many days and weeks. That way you reduce the number of people who are in any one place at a given time. The last suggestion that we've made is vote by mail. And many states do vote by mail. The idea with vote by mail is that you simply, I say simply, it's not really a simple process, but the idea is simple. And that is that you would send a ballot to every voter, every registered voter in the state prior to the election. So everyone would just get a ballot in the mail. You then complete the ballot and send it in either by mail or drop it off at a drop-off location. So delaying the primaries, delaying the June primaries is also an idea that many have asked about, and is certainly an idea that's being considered and would require some action by the General Assembly or governor or some other competent legal authority. So what I can tell you is that the State Election Commission does not have the authority to enact any of these changes. We're simply providing these ideas to the General Assembly. We encourage you that if you support any of these ideas or all of them, to reach out to your lawmakers, reach out to the governor's office, let your voice be heard, and be an advocate for some of these changes. At this point, the June primaries are still on. We are beginning the process of preparing ballots and getting ready for June. So we'll continue to do that unless something changes. So I encourage you all to, if you're not already registered, to get registered. If you need to update your address, update your address, make sure you're ready to go for Election Day, and find the voting method that works best for you. And when you do that, most importantly, vote. So I want to thank again Abel for giving us this opportunity, and I wish everybody a good afternoon.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
We have heard from some really fantastic speakers so far, and we have 3 more left that are going to start driving us home. Our next speaker is Senator Thomas McElveen. He is a native of Sumter County, where he lives and practices law. He's currently serving his 2nd term in the South Carolina Senate, where he represents District 35, covering parts of Sumter, Kershaw, Lee, and Richland counties. It's my honor to welcome Senator Thomas McElveen.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Oops, we seem to be experiencing technical difficulties. Please stay on the live stream as we quickly work to resolve the issue. Hashtag BarrierFreeSC.
Is it working now? All right, it keeps zapping me out for some reason. Over. Okay. Good afternoon again. This is Thomas McElveen, and we were having some technical difficulties earlier, but what I was saying is that it's a real honor to be here today, and I appreciate Abel for asking me, and also my good friend Ed Schaefer, who invited me. Ed does a lot of important lobbying work at the State House here in South Carolina, and he was also a law school classmate of mine. So I'm glad to be here. And you know what I wanted to start talking about was what I have learned now in 8 years of being a part-time legislator. It feels like full-time this time of year when we're in session ordinarily. What I've learned is that we have a real myriad of issues coming at us as part-time legislators operating on limited schedules. And, you know, obviously some things get more attention than others. And when you hear politicians like me campaigning, which you'll probably hear a lot of in 2020, folks want to talk about things like the economy and jobs and education. But when you actually get in there and you start learning more about the issues that face your communities and your state, one example I always give is that along with my colleague, Senator Shealy, who you heard from earlier, we came in the Senate the same year. I didn't have children at the time. I have 2 now, but I quickly became a children's advocate when I found out a lot of things that were going on with the Department of Social Services. And so, you know, we pay attention to, I guess, to the issues that are on our table. But a lot of times, you know, when we talk about folks in our communities that are living with the challenges of disabilities, a lot of the lobbying at the State House and a lot of the advocacy comes from those people in our community. And so that's something that I've really come to appreciate in my 8 years of service. And what I tell folks a lot is, every single year, I make it a point at the State House to meet with constituents who are, living their lives with challenges such as MS, hemophilia, and heart conditions, cancer. We meet every year with parents who have children that are living with varying degrees of autism, and so those folks are heroes to us in the legislature because they are real advocates who come over there and ask us to make sure that we advocate for them as legislators and policymakers in South Carolina. And so a lot of the issues that we don't hear about publicly are important issues for people in our state, especially when you talk about making sure that folks who do have disabilities can fully integrate within our economy, within our workforce, and within our society. And so I've always thought that as policymakers, we need to always lend a listening ear to those folks, and we need to do what we can to advocate for their interests. It was interesting to me that just now, I know you heard from Mr. Whitmire with our election commission, and we all know that we're living in these difficult times currently, these uncertain times with coronavirus. And I heard him talk about the primary elections, and it's interesting because I joined a couple of House members here in South Carolina just yesterday and sent a letter to the governor. Not so much concerned about the June primary, because as we know, we typically get pretty low turnout in South Carolina in June primaries when you don't have any statewide candidates on the ballot. You don't have any presidential candidates on the ballot because that's already been done. But the turnout in November under normal circumstances would have probably been historic. And so, we sent a letter yesterday to the governor, and this would apply whether you're standing in line or whether you are using curbside voting service at your precinct. But we don't want people in South Carolina, anyone, to have to make a decision as to whether or not to protect their health or to exercise their most precious right as Americans, and that's the right to vote. And so what we are currently, some of us are currently pushing for is for the governor to move forward with some sort of plan as to how we can leverage the $400 million that's going to be available for elections in November to make sure that our folks will be able to vote in a way they'll have access to the ballot and will have access to the voting place, whether that's more relaxed absentee voting than usual, or whether it's mail-in ballots like we do for folks who are overseas right now. And so those are some of the things that are kind of on our plate right now. Our South Carolina Senate is not meeting regularly right now with the coronavirus outbreak going on. Our schedule is a little uncertain, but when we were in session, I've been working also with the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association to oppose some legislation that we don't think would be beneficial for a lot of people in our state. And so, like I said, I think that the best advocates that we have are as legislators, and some of the best advocates there are the folks who are actually living in our communities and leading productive lives, meeting the challenges when they do have disabilities, and who are making us aware of those challenges. And so I just appreciate the advocacy. I'll always be an advocate for folks who need me, but just want to say that it's been a great pleasure to be here today. And I again appreciate Abel and appreciate my friend Ed Schaefer for the invitation. And I wish everyone, I hope everyone stays healthy and stays safe during these uncertain times. We're going to get through it together. Thank you.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. #BarrierFreeSC.
Okay, can you see me? Can you hear me as well? Okay.
I'm so excited to welcome our next guest. That is Naomi Simmons Thorne. Naomi is an award-winning scholar, educator, and activist organizer based out of Columbia, South Carolina. She's also the founder and director of the Center for Social Equity, a grassroots nonprofit organization that supports and empowers South Carolina's Black and LGBTQ plus community. Naomi has participated in and led numerous organizing efforts within the state and the larger Southeast region. In 2018, Naomi became an inaugural inductee into the Obama Foundation's Community Leadership Corps. We're so glad to have Naomi here in South Carolina and so excited to welcome her as part of our event today. Naomi, take it away.
Greetings, everyone. Hi. Yes, my name is Naomi Simmons Thorne. I'm so excited to be here with you all during this special virtual Advocacy Day. With the brief time that I have, I'll be discussing the importance of intersectionality with respect to the disability community. The term intersectionality was coined in 1989 by the legal theorist and feminist scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. Many of you, as I'm well aware, have more than likely heard this term before. It's a term used to describe amongst a broad range of social justice practitioners. It's a term we use to describe the interlocking nature of oppression and how multiple identity categories can converge and overlap to create compounding and unique experiences of marginalization. Although generally used as a catch-all, intersectionality can actually take on more than one form. And for the purposes of today's Virtual Advocacy Day, I'm going to cover just 5 of those. So the first is structural intersectionality. It describes the way that individuals experience systems and institutions based on their multiple intersecting marginalized identities. Abortion access, for example, can be harder to acquire for women with disabilities than it is for women without disabilities. The second is political intersectionality. It describes the gap that's often created in movements and by organizations when multiple identity categories are not taken into account. Last year, for example, a local movement here in South Carolina called SC for Ed put together a very strong educational reform agenda. But that agenda did not include specifics around special education or school accessibility. Third, representational intersectionality. It describes the stigmas and stereotypes associated when multiple marginalized identities converge. For example, a lot of us have heard about the stereotype of the welfare queen before that's applied to low-income Black women. Just think about how that stereotype might create additional barriers for low-income Black women when they have disabilities and are also trying to access benefits. The fourth, experiential intersectionality, describes the unique experiences of overlapping marginalized identities that can't really be described by the singular experiences of any one of those identities. Being a person of color with disabilities is not the same thing as just being a person of color or just having a disability. And lastly, intersectional identities. Those are the identities that we acquire through identification with multiple marginalized communities. And we've already touched on a number of those kind of identities. So as a Black trans woman, what does it mean for me as an ally to center the disability community in my intersectional activism? Well, it means that when I'm doing work around school pushout or police brutality, that I highlight how those inequalities impact disproportionately those with disabilities. It means that I center their experiences and make sure that the disability community is at the decision table. It also means that so long as getting married can disqualify those in the LGBTQ disability community from accessing benefits, that our society hasn't really achieved full marriage equality and that our community continues to work towards that goal. What it simply means is that to fight for any community, be it LGBTQ, undocumented, communities of color, is to fight for the people in those communities with disabilities, centering their voices, dismantling personal and societal prejudices, making our movements and world fully accessible, and refusing to make decisions if disability voices are not at the table. And that brings me to the end of my segment. But I just want to thank you all so much for joining us for this year's Virtual Advocacy Day, and I hope you all stay safe.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Don't go away. The next speaker will be joining us shortly. Hashtag barrier-free SC.
we have heard so many voices today that are raising the call for disability rights and equity. As we look back at the comments that we've heard so far, we have had clear calls for access to public services and activities, clear calls for employment, clear calls for housing and transportation, clear calls for education. Over the course of our time together today, we have given an opportunity for you to share your voice directly with folks who are elected. We have given an opportunity for you to network and to share with each other in the chat and whatever platform that you're on. We've also had the opportunity to learn from intersectional rights groups and how important it is that disability rights are part of a larger rights movement that impacts so many in so many different ways. With all of those things in mind, this one day is not the end, but is a beginning. And it's an opportunity for us to link arms and to further rights in South Carolina. Thank you all for the work that you have been doing today. Please continue it. Please get connected to the South Carolina Access and Independence Network, your local Center for Independent Living. Please get connected with your local representation. We heard multiple calls from elected officials about how much they rely on your voice and being able to hear directly from your perspective. So please reach out to your representatives, your senators, your mayors, your council people. They need to hear from you so they know how to make decisions that impact you on a daily basis. With all of that said, I hope that today has been a fantastic day for you. We have one last speaker who is definitely last but not least. We are so excited to welcome Judy Heumann. Judy is an internationally recognized leader in the disability rights movement. She has helped lead the monumental Section 504 sit-in that has become famous from 1977. It's been featured lots of places and the story retold from many different angles. It is so fundamentally important to the disability rights movement in the United States. Under the Obama administration, she was appointed as the first special advisor for international disability rights for the South Carolina Department of State. So we are introducing a national and international rights leader. Recently, she has released a memoir called Being Human, an unrepentant memoir of a disability rights activist. Please check it out and learn from a true master of advocacy and follow in her footsteps. And she has also been featured in the brand new Netflix documentary that was released super recently. I think it came out last week. So please check that out as well. It's called Crip Camp, and it tells the story of the work that was necessary in order to bring first real disability rights legislation in the United States. It is my overflowing pleasure, and it's my great honor to welcome Ms. Judy Heumann.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Ready. Hello, everybody. I really want to commend the organizers of today's event for continuing the event in spite of the fact that we're not able to do this in the traditional way of being outside of your capital. I'd like to focus for a few minutes on how you need, as a state, to continue to do the great work that you have been doing to advance the rights of disabled people and being a model for other states on what they need to be doing. You know, we are living, as we all know, in a very turbulent time. Issues that are being discussed, such as voting rights, in my view, are more imperative than ever. Our ability to get to people who have disabilities, who have not yet identified as having a disability, is also imperative, both for voting rights, but also now with the COVID-19, we must make sure that we are being vigilant, both as individuals and working consistently with our disability rights organizations. But I also want to encourage people at the local level, if you're involved with mosques or churches or synagogues or other forms of religious groups or other kinds of organizations that exist in your communities, please make sure that you are aware of what they are doing in relationship to trying to both prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus, as well as helping to ensure that people who are at greater risk, many of us who have disabilities and are not able in a normal situation to get out and about and maybe are having more difficult times because of the situation we're involved with. These discussions, which I hear are going on a regular basis with many of your state agencies, are imperative. But I also believe that it's really important for us as individuals to be taking responsibility for ourselves. So I encourage you also to really put together basic information on in the event that you were to contract the virus, contact information, doctor information, information about yourself and your disability, and being able to have a paper that you would be able to give to a hospital should you wind up in that situation. But really, I think one of the imperative issues right now is that we want everyone more than ever to take the benefit of the advocacy work you've been doing for many years, to be able to allow people to see that disabled individuals, regardless of our disability, have a right to the same quality of health care and the right to receive information on prevention and what to be doing should a problem arise for us or within our families. I think this is very much a part of what is going to be going on in the future over the electoral system, with voting that's going to be taking place both at the state for primaries as well as the election in the fall. I think what we're seeing right now are gaps in our preparing as a country and as individual states. This should be a time when you're really speaking to both your state representatives, your local representatives, and your US senators and congressmen and through the White House to really be addressing the issue, not just of disability, but to be looking futuristically forward. What are we doing to help ensure that we have an adequately trained system of healthcare providers? What are we doing to ensure that the cost of going for training, medical school, nursing school, personal assistance training where needed, et cetera? What are we doing to ensure that people are getting what they need and not having to look at going into debt? What are we doing in the area of sign language interpreters and services for people who are blind, people who are deaf, blind, people with intellectual disabilities, and the many other disabilities that we all know about? We have for many, many years been speaking about the fact that disability has not been seen in the same vein as other communities are. And this is a time not only for us to speak up and speak out, but also to be working more actively with other coalitions of organizations that will be over the next number of months evaluating not only what is going on with our communities now, but what we need to be doing futuristically. The issue of disaster preparation and relief is obviously with storms and earthquakes and things of that nature, but now we're seeing issues like this virus. So I want to thank you all for inviting me to speak. I really encourage you to look at Crip Camp. I think it's a fantastic film that was made by two amazing directors, Jim Lebrecht and Nicole Noonan. Jim himself has a disability. It'll give you a good understanding of some of the beginning of the disability rights movement. And equally importantly, I think it also can give you kind of a backdrop of the documentation that you may want to be looking at having occur in South Carolina. So down the road, people will know about the leadership in your state, the work that's been done, the benefits that have arisen, the barriers that still exist. The fact that there are 1,000 people or more on this call today is a tremendous asset and a tremendous statement for the work that is going on in South Carolina. We must remember that when voting is going to be occurring this fall, We must fight against any kind of bias, which is precluding people with different types of disabilities, racial backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, etc. Now more than ever, we must be fighting that everyone's vote counts, and we must be fighting against those people who are trying to limit and restrict the number of people who can vote because they're afraid of being voted out of office. So thank you all very much. Please be safe. Please take care of yourself. Be prepared. Talk with your families and your neighbors. Be involved with your legislators. Do not be shy. And at the same time, I really encourage you to be working in a collaborative way, because it's very important that the messages that are going to be given to your state legislators and others about things that may be coming up as legislation may be moving forward, specifically dealing with the virus situation now, that we are trying to speak in a unified voice. So we need to be looking specifically, and I know people are doing that right now. The message needs to get out so that we are working cohesively, fighting against discrimination across the board. Thank you all very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much to all of the people who presented today and helped raise the voice of the disability community in furthering access, independence, and equity here in South Carolina, across the country, and across the globe. Please stay active. Your voice needs to be heard. Thank you so much for participating today.
Advocacy Day for Access and Independence. Thank you for participating. Keep the conversation going. Follow us on Facebook at SC Access and Independence Network at Able, South Carolina, on Twitter and Periscope at Able_SC, on Instagram and YouTube at Able, South Carolina. UnlockingBarriersSC.org, #BarrierFreeSC.